sisters. Welcome to another Quran study. Today we're going to be reading from Surah 37, verse 114. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another Quran study. Today we'll be reading from Surah 37, verse 114. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Moses and Aaron, verse 114. We also blessed Moses and Aaron. We delivered them and their people from the great disaster. We supported them until they became the winners. We gave both of them the profound scripture. We guided them in the right path. We preserved their history for subsequent generations. Peace be upon Moses and Aaron. We thus reward the righteous. Both of them were among our righteous servants. So subhanallah, we see in these verses how much God blessed Moses and Aaron, and we also see how the Quran speaks the truth about the scripture given to both of them. Not only to Moses, but here we read in the Quran that God says we gave both of them the profound scripture. So it's very important and to highlight that as well, subhanAllah, because a lot of people say that Moses was given the Old Testament, and we know that, or given the Torah, and we know that it was given to Moses and Aaron, subhanAllah. We read in the Quran.
So the Torah was given to not just Moses and Aaron. The Torah was also given to other prophets in Israel, and it's a combination.
Yeah.
The book of Moses was given to Moses and Aaron.
Subhanallah, right, brother. True. It's the Old Testament it's even the gospel and every other scripture of the prophets, right, brother?
Sorry, can you say that again?
I said it was it also includes the gospel of Jesus and all the other scriptures given to other prophets as well. The Old Testament.
No, it's in the New Testament because Jesus is in the New Testament.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes.
Okay, so the Torah is separated from the Old Testament. The book of Moses.
So Torah is part of the Old Testament, right?
Okay. SubhanAllah. Elias, verse 123. Elias was one of the messengers. He said to his people, "Would you not work righteousness? Do you worship a statue instead of the Supreme Creator? God, your Lord, the Lord of your forefathers." They disbelieved him. Consequently, they had to be called to account. So subhanAllah, we see all through the Quran that, true intelligence comes from worshiping God alone. We see verses and that God explains to us about Abraham, his intelligence of him at that time where people were just worshipping idols, what is saying here as well. SubhanAllah, Abraham's comment saying like, you're going to worship this instead the Lord of the universe. At that time that's like they probably thought like, what's going on, like what he's saying, but we know that intelligence comes from God. They were so ignorant that they worship these idols, and Abraham came with this whole different idea, and the truth path. And we see here again, Elias telling his people, like, you're worshiping, like, why are you worshiping these things? And, instead of the Lord, God. And he's explaining these things, like, he's realizing, he knows, like, he sees the trees, and, he sees all these things, and he's saying, like, how are you going to worship these things that don't have no power, don't talk, you make them out of wood? Like, how are you going to worship these things instead of the one that created it all, So that's true intelligence even now, subhanAllah, It's truly amazing. They disbelieved him, consequently they had to be called to account. Only God's servants who are absolutely devoted to him alone are saved. So subhanAllah, we see again this important commandment, We see that the only humans that are saved is the ones that submit to God alone. It's very simple, but at the same time it's not easy, subhanAllah, because we see that a lot of people could say, yeah, I'm devoted to God alone, but then they mix other things among that, and we truly see as submitters, and we see that a lot of people say they're devoted to God alone, but you see that, at the same time they're over here idolizing other things, idolizing prophets and messengers. So yeah, it's simple, devote yourselves to God alone, but it's not easy, subhanAllah. Verse 129, we preserved his history for subsequent generations. Peace be upon Elias and all those like Elias. Subhanallah. And we see, when God says all those like Elias, is the people that, followed Elias, the people that followed what Elias brought to them. Subhanallah, the laws and the commandments that God had given to him and given to the people that followed him. That's how God has always worked. It's part of the test, subhanAllah, and it's always been God's way. So this is what God is telling us here, subhanAllah. 131, we thus reward the righteous. He was one of our believing servants. SubhanAllah. Lot was one of the messengers. Lot. 133, Lot was one of the messengers. We saved him and all his family. Only the old woman was doomed. We annihilated all the others. You still pass by the ruins by day and by night. Will you understand? So subhanAllah, we see here, I'm pretty sure, subhanAllah, that the old woman was Lot's wife, subhanAllah, and she, she was doomed because, yeah, she was among believers, but we see the importance here as, like I could say that, I could be wrong, but subhanAllah, I could say that, she was a hypocrite. She was among the believers. Her husband was Lot, subhanAllah, and and she still ended up being doomed because God knew, subhanAllah, that there was, she was among them, and she was Lot's wife, subhanAllah, but probably I'm not sure, but I think she was probably saying it's okay, subhanAllah, you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but saying it's okay, just going with the flow type of thing, and not actually submitting absolutely to God, subhanAllah. Yeah, we could say that's correct, because if she was to submit absolutely to God, then she would have been saved. But you see, she wasn't saved. So you see, she wasn't submitted to God. She ended up being doomed with the losers. Jonah, verse 139. Jonah was one of the messengers. He escaped to the loaded ship. He rebelled, and thus he joined the losers. Consequently, the fish swallowed him, and he was the one to blame. If it were not that he resorted to meditation on God, he would have stayed in its belly until the day of resurrection. We had him thrown up into the desert, exhausted. We had a tree of edible fruit grown for him. Then we sent him to 100,000 or more. They did believe, and we let them enjoy this life. Ask them if your Lord has daughters while they have sons. Did we create the angels to be females? Did you witness that? So subhanAllah, we see here that, Jonah, this is a great example, for anybody that's going through a situation that's hopeless and, they don't know what to turn to, You see a lot of people committing suicide and, in situations like that, subhanAllah, where it gets so hard, subhanAllah, we see Jonah, it's a great example of that. We see that he was in that, if it wasn't for God and his meditation in God and him turning absolutely to God alone, he would have been doomed. God says it clearly here that, he was, the only thing that saved him was his meditation and his submission to God, because he turned to God alone. That's the only reason why Jonah got saved, subhanAllah. So it's a great example for anybody, that is going through something, similar and something just so horrible, inshallah, God willing, God will get you out of there, subhanAllah, With God lays everything and God will save you, subhanAllah. If you truly repent and you ask God for forgiveness and you strive for righteousness, subhanAllah, we learn in the Quran that God will forgive you, subhanAllah. And God always makes it up to the righteous, to the believers, subhanAllah. SubhanAllah, and probably we could talk more about verse 148. They did believe, and we let them enjoy this life. SubhanAllah, it's, because in the Quran, God also says we let them enjoy in this life and the hereafter. So, we could speak a little bit more of that. SubhanAllah, after the Quran statement. And also we know, I believe that in Muhammad's area and his people, they were attributing, the Arabs were attributing like these statues, and they were saying all these blaspheming things, and God is saying, and we know that they themselves didn't like to have daughters, and they were doing horrible, evil things, subhanAllah, similar things to what even Pharaoh was doing, subhanAllah, those kind of evil things. Verse 151. Indeed, they grossly blaspheme when they say, God has begotten a son. Indeed, they are liars. Subhanallah, and then God proclaims, and even people, the Christians say that, Isa, Jesus, was the Son of God. And God is saying here, like, how gross is that? It's the same grossness and what the Arabs, are saying, these kind of blasphemy things that have no they have no basis on their sayings. It's all we all know it's all from Satan, the rejected, and just ways of turning these people wicked. Subhanallah, we know that God is absolute. God doesn't need no help, and we as submitters, as believers, He has all the power to help us, but God doesn't need anything or anyone. And we know these horrible lies come from Satan, the rejected. Subhanallah. Indeed, they are liars. Did He choose the girls over the boys? What is wrong with your logic? Addressing the disbelievers. Why do you not take heed? Do you have any proof? Show us your book if you are truthful. They even invented a special relationship between Him and the jinns. The jinns themselves know that they are subservient. And subhanallah, we understand this to be true. Of the stories of David and Solomon, subhanallah, we see that even the wicked jinns, they ended up, they had no they were subservient to God. They were submitters to God. Even the evil jinns, they had to submit to God. God said, "You're gonna help, my servant on this and this task and these things," and they submitted. Subhanallah. And we see this in this verse that they have no power. Subhanallah. We see in this the verses when they speak about Jonah and David and Solomon. Subhanallah. These evil jinns and jinns that were submitters as well, they all submitted, and they all submitted to God, subhanAllah. And we know everything submits to God, unwillingly or willingly, subhanAllah. Verse 159, God be glorified, far above their claims. Only God's servants who are devoted to Him alone are saved. Indeed, you and what you worship cannot impose anything to Him. Only you will burn in hell. So, subhanallah, we see God is talking, to the disbelievers, like all these things, all this confusion and all these things you utter, it's just gonna affect you. You can't affect or not even think about, even that, it's not possible, subhanallah, you can't, it's like God says, they are going to be ruined, subhanallah. And as believers, it's a good verse to think about, and, we know if we submit to God, we stay close to God and we observe God and we think about God all the time, these things, these people, that believe these things, no matter what they scheme or no matter what they try to do to us, subhanallah, God, inshallah, will protect us, subhanallah. God be glorified. The angels. Verse 164. Each one of us has a specific job. We are the arrangers. We have duly glorified our Lord, following the parents blindly. Verse 167, they used to say, had we received the correct instructions from our parents, we would have been worshippers devoted to God alone. But they disbelieve, and they will surely find out. So subhanAllah, these people, are making excuses and are saying, like, if my parents were guided, if my parents were guided and my parents would tell me, to devote myself absolutely to God, I would do it. But that's not how subhanAllah, God grants His blessings upon whoever He wills, subhanAllah, We don't choose who the messengers to be or anything. God chooses, subhanAllah. And the true believers, no matter where the guidance comes from, subhanAllah, they're going to follow that. They're not going to see where he comes from or they're my parents or anything like that. They recognize the truth that the messenger is speaking and they follow it, subhanAllah. They follow it totally submitted to God alone. But they disbelieve and they will surely find out. Victory for the messengers guaranteed. Verse 171. Our decision is already decreed for our servants, the messengers. They are surely the victors. Our soldiers are the winners, so disregard them for a while. Watch them, they too will watch. Do they challenge our retribution? When it hits them one day, it will be a miserable day. They have been sufficiently warned. And subhanAllah, I apologize for missing the footnote too of the first page I was reading. They've been sufficiently warned. Disregard them for a while, watch them, they too will watch. Glory be to your Lord, the great Lord, far above their claims. Peace be upon the messengers. Praise be to God, Lord of the universe. SubhanAllah. So subhanAllah, we know that, the messengers are always going to be victorious. SubhanAllah, they have one job, subhanAllah, and that job is to deliver the message, subhanAllah, and to deliver it efficiently, subhanAllah. And it's very important. That's actually very important, because we see, people try to say otherwise, but subhanAllah, that's the job of the messenger. So the messengers deliver the message efficiently, and they will be victorious. God will send angels, to protect them, subhanAllah, divine wisdom, and God will protect them until they until they do their job, subhanAllah. That's giving the message, efficiently with no errors, subhanAllah, giving the message clearly, subhanAllah. And we know that God sends angels to protect us, subhanAllah, the messengers, and as well as the believers that follow the messengers, subhanAllah. Surah 38, Sa'd. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Verse 1, Sa'd, and the Quran that contains the proof. Those who disbelieve have plunged into arrogance and defiance. Many a generation before them we annihilated. They called for help in vain. So, subhanAllah, we see that this surah is named after Sa'd, and we know that this initial, subhanAllah, is very important regarding the mathematical miracle. And God is so much proof, subhanAllah, it's amazing, subhanAllah. And God says, and the Quran that contains the proof, subhanAllah. We know that the proof is the mathematical code, subhanAllah, it's one of the greatest miracles, subhanallah, you know, and it's as believers, subhanallah, we know that it's really amazing. And I will read the footnote for verse 1. This initial Sa'ad occurs in Surah 7, 19, and 38, a total of 152 times, 19 times 8. Appendix 1. 38, verse 1, the word zirk is made distinct from the Quran and clearly points at the Quran's miraculous mathematical code. C 15, Surah 15, verse 6, and 9, Surah 16, verse 44, Surah 21, verse 2 and 24, Surah 26, verse 5, and 36, and Surah 36, verse 11, and 69. Verse 4. They wondered that a warner should come to them from among them. The disbelievers said, a magician, a liar. Did he make the gods into one God? Brother, did you say something?
Yeah, we stopped
Okay.
at 2 pages. So we'll be in verse 3.
Okay. Okay, subhanallah, thank you. Inshallah, thank you for listening, and if you guys have any questions or discussions or off-topic questions, feel free to do so, subhanallah.
Inshallah, thank you.
Thank you.
Inshallah, thank you.
Inshallah. I guess I have for corrections too. I apologize too for the confusion in the beginning. I don't know what happened there, but God knows best.
Yeah, so I had a question. I don't know if it really matters, but in the verse that you have read, it is talking about the old woman. You said it is his wife. Was this information? Is this information from the Quran or from the voice messages or voice recordings or videos of the messenger?
Subhanallah, I believe you guys correct me, but I feel like I was getting this information from the Quran and from audios as well, and just
Yeah, that's what I deducted from it. I think it's talking about Lot's wife. In that respect, it just calls her an old woman. I think it says in another part of the Quran too.
Yeah, and also what I want to add here is that it talks about his wife being doomed, right? But the thing it doesn't say is it doesn't say that she was a hypocrite or that she was among the believers, right? In that sense, like we don't know if she was a hypocrite or a disbeliever.
okay.
She could be either, right? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's true. Good
Just,
point.
Subhanallah.
Mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah. So, in the verse, God could also say his wife in that specific verse, right? That she was to be left behind. But if I'm not mistaken, again, there is the voice recording of Dr. Rashad talking about this topic. If you guys remember, I don't know.
Yeah, also Jafar, there is other places where this is mentioned, right? About Noah's about his wife, right?
Hmm.
Lot's wife, and the references are to these verses about his wife
Yeah,
being
because
doomed,
she
right?
was the one who went to the people and told them about the guests of Lot, right?
Uh, we don't have that information in the Quran about her saying stuff, but like we just know that it says his wife betrayed him, right? And uh, and he couldn't
Oh,
save
okay.
his wife.
Um, okay. Okay, I'll check that up because,
Like look at the
yeah.
for example, if you look at the one for intercession,
Hmm.
the topics of intercession where it talks about how he could not save his wife.
Yes.
And then there's another place where it says except his wife. Maybe let me search that up.
Mm-hmm. Let me check.
His wife. Consequently, we saved him and his family, but not his wife. She was with the doomed. This is in Surah 7, verse 83. And then also there is like other places, like say uh, Surah 15, verse 60, 59 and 60. It says, "As for Lot's family, we will save them all, but not his wife. She's destined to be with the doomed." So every time this is mentioned, God says that He will save Lot's family except his wife.
Subhanallah.
She's with the doomed. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, brother. So it starts with actually Surah 11, verse 77. And then it says, when our, so homosexuality condemned, when our messengers went to Lot, they were mistreated, and he was embarrassed by their presence. He said, this is a difficult day. These people came rushing. They had grown accustomed to their sinful acts. He said, oh, my people, it will be pure for you if you take my daughters instead. We shall reference God, do not embarrass me with my guests. Have you not one? So, okay, so I need to check whether I have read that. So in this case, it is not from the Quran where the thing that I said, like uh, his wife went to the people, told them about the guests, and then
Mm-hmm.
they rushed there.
Yeah, it doesn't say that.
Okay. Because how would they know that he had these guests, right? How would they know
It could
that?
be anybody.
Okay.
They could have been spying or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Little
It could be a
spies.
servant. It could be,
Mm-hmm.
the someone gardener. It could be so many people.
Yeah, because she was the one who's been punished, right? So I thought maybe she is the
Well,
one who went there and then.
yeah, but I mean, you couldn't just be punished for just telling on someone in that sense. I mean, she was a disbeliever in him, in the message, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but doesn't necessarily mean that it was her.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the verse on with Jonah, meditation on God. He would have stayed in his belly until the day of resurrection. That's real good, you know, that he meditated and God helped him after his big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
SubhanAllah.
True.
Yeah, so I checked again about the Lut's wife, and I want to add something here. So the thing is this, because we have been told these stories for so many long years, it is possible that we may think that things which are not written in the Quran, that we think that they are there. So that's why it's very important to read the Quran, as much as possible, to make sure that all the information that we have received from like our parents or from the mosques, from the imam, or all the stories that are being told to us, that we know that it is not from the Quran. Sometimes, when we're talking to people and talking about, for example, this example of Lut and his wife, it is possible that we can mention these things which is not there in the Quran.
SubhanAllah,
Mm-hmm.
right, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had it, I was like, in my mind, I thought, oh, I read
Mm-hmm.
somewhere about the situation where his wife went to the people, told them, Lut had some guests and they were so, like, very handsome guys, and then, that kind of stuff. Um, but so, yeah, it's really important to read as much as possible and repeat, of course.
Inshallah.
Yeah. That's why I was asking actually, like, she should be probably the one who went there and told them because of the information that I have received many, many years ago.
Yeah, SubhanAllah, that's very true, brother, because we come, a lot of us come from different religious backgrounds, Christianity and things like that, and, it's, like you said, it could get, we must make sure that it's all from the Quran and that we study the Quran and make sure that what we're talking about, it's from the Quran, SubhanAllah. You're absolutely right, brother.
Yeah, I also want to add that this title of the surah is called the Arrangers, and we know all these titles are divinely, selected and named specifically by God and has a mathematical correlation with the context also of the Quran. And so it's interesting to see that the word the arrangers is mentioned all the way towards the end of the surah. Like there's 182 verses, and the arrangers is mentioned in verse 165. You know.
Yeah, so the word arrangers is mentioned in 65,
Verse 165.
165, and it's
Yeah, we
about
are the arrangers,
the.
angels.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing is, the things that are being told in the Quran, you have also similarities in the Bible, of course, and there it's been told almost the same story. But then, for example, in the Bible, it says that his wife, he came with them, but then she looked behind, and that's the reason that she turned to stone or something like that. And then when you look at the Quran, it's like very different. It says that she didn't go with them, right? She was left behind. Um, so subhanallah, this shows also gives us this specific information, so we can clearly see um, what the differences are. Because a lot of people, they are saying that the Quran is copied and Muhammad copied the Bible, let's say, because it's very similar to the Bible. But it's very different, right? To see that in one case she is left behind, in the other case she just goes with them. It's like totally different from each other. And of course, with the mathematical miracle and the Quran, we know that what the real story is.
So where does it
and the
says
other thing,
it goes with them?
I think in let me see,
In the
no,
Bible, you
in the
said?
Bible, in the Bible.
Well, isn't there a story about the pillar of salt?
1 second. Sodom and Gomorrah. So,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
1926.
After so you're saying that she looked, she went, but she
Yeah,
looked back.
because she looked back, yeah, and then like she turned into something, and like when you look at the Bible and the Quran, right? So you have these story, the things that are happened, but then we can clearly see that there is a difference. And because the Quran came after the Bible, God is mentioning these specific things, right? For example, the specific thing that she was left behind, and in the Bible it says no, she went with them, but then the other thing happened. And I believe this is one of the things that shows, first of all, that Muhammad didn't copy the Bible. Like, if you want to copy, why should you change that, right?
So where does it say she was left behind?
No, it says except the old woman, right? That is what I meant.
No, that she was doomed, which the Bible says too that they were doomed, right? So God
The
says He
Bible,
saved them except His wife. She was doomed, right? So
yes. So she didn't go with them,
mm,
right?
it doesn't. It doesn't say that she went with them or not. It just says that you know they were supposed to go and not look back, and he was saved. All the believers were saved, but his wife was doomed,
Yes.
right? It doesn't say whether she went with them or not.
Ah, okay.
The only thing in
Okay. Yeah, because
the Bible says she looked back, right? In the Bible, that's the
Yeah.
difference.
Uh,
also it is possible that she went with them, but still she was doomed because of the. Did we understand it in that way?
yeah, I mean, she could have been on her way and gotten hit too. I mean, we don't know. Right.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, because when you look in general to the whole story, then like, okay, because she was doomed, so then I thought probably she stayed there,
Yeah, it's possible.
and then she is being doomed and got also the punishment that the other people get to.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if I can say that she refused to go with them or like
Right, because the Quran doesn't provide that.
it doesn't say that, it doesn't give that detail. Either way, it's
Ah,
irrelevant. I
okay.
mean,
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
are not mentioned in the Quran. I mean, I mean, more than uh, like possible that I mean, I would say like, I mean, it's possible that she could have stayed. Also, like it's likely that she didn't. Also, but I mean, she could have slipped too and fallen down or something. But either way, we know that God only saves the believers, and the wife was doomed. His wife was doomed, and he couldn't save her. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the idea you get when you read the
yeah,
story, right? Like
yeah. So
things are
if
happening, and then she's the one,
so,
etc. But
so if you're a submitter and someone's really, really dear to you and stuff like the messenger and his wife. I mean, he couldn't do anything to guide her. Noah couldn't do anything to guide his son or his wife, and neither could Lot do anything to save his wife. I mean, that's the lesson, right? That you could be the messenger's wife, and still, that's not going to save you. So people who think that Muhammad's going to save him and them and their kids and their uncles and their aunts and all the other children and all the people in the family and all this. I mean, all these countries who people who worship Muhammad, so-called Muslims, they're basically the Mohammedans. Muhammad can't do anything. He couldn't save his own uncle, and that's something for people to think about. That I mean, if these messengers had any power to intercede, they could have saved them because these were people that were going to be annihilated by God's retribution and going to hell. So he couldn't save his wife; she went to hell, and that's the important part. And Also, well, I said something about the arrangers, but also notice that it's also mentioned in the first verse of the surah, the arrangers in columns, right? So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this means that the arrangers in columns, it's talking about the three categories of people, right? The right and the left and the front. People will be arranged in columns. Or was it talking about?
I mean, it's interesting, brother, because we see that then after the Rangers in columns, the blamers of those to be blamed. And so we know that this is going to be um, in the day of resurrection. When people are being arranged with. Yeah, it's interesting, subhanallah. I mean, it doesn't say it directly, but
Hmm. It says that um, in Appendix 11 that humans and jinns will be stratified, automatically stratified, according to the degree of growth and development. But that's talking about the high heaven, the low heaven, and the purgatory and hell. Oh, um, yeah. Now I'm confused about the
SubhanAllah, brother.
arrangers in columns.
You got me thinking too.
Um, yeah. Is it talking about the arrangers that are in columns, or is it talking about arrangers that they arrange things in columns?
Well, the arrangers are the angels, right? And in columns, it would be, I would, I would say like the jinns and the people to be judged, subhanallah, or the
Mm-hmm.
people gathered, and who like the people that are going to be judged, subhanallah, by their works. So I would think like the arrangers, we know the angels, and then columns would be
Mm-hmm.
humans and jinns. But I'm not sure, like what you were saying in the beginning. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
it's like the right, how God says there will be people on the right, and then and how you said it.
Yeah, but I mean, it could also mean that the arrangers could be in columns too, you know?
Right,
Um,
right. No, okay. Yeah, I
yeah.
see. Right, right. Like the angels themselves in columns. Uh huh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes more sense, brother,
Mm-hmm.
because of the verses following that.
Mm-hmm.
The verses after verse 1.
Mm-hmm. So I think going back to Jonah, we were talking about Jonah, and you mentioned, brother Rafael, you mentioned something about suicide.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't.
I was just saying, how like people that are I was just saying like how bad things could get, people in
Mm-hmm.
situations like that. I was just
Mm-hmm.
trying to explain like how God could get you out of there, you know, out of a
Mm-hmm. I
situ.
see. Yes.
Yes.
I see. Like the fish swallowed him, and he was in a bad situation. And you said like, people could be in similar situations. They would just maybe end up doing something terrible, like committing suicide or completely, despairing from God's mercy and grace
Right, brother.
and
Like
losing hope. Right. Right.
right. You know, how God says, he
Mm-hmm.
was like, if it wasn't for him turning to God, he would have been doomed.
Mm-hmm.
What saved him, it was his because he went to God for help, and that's what I was really trying to like say. Probably didn't explain it the best, but I was trying to say that people in situations that are so bad, you know,
Mm-hmm.
God has all the power, and God has the power to get him out of there. Get him out of that
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Did you read the footnote for 37:147?
No, I think that's the one I had said in the Quran that I missed. Subhanallah, apologize for that.
Okay.
It's actually
Okay.
I was looking for this footnote the other time too with the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find it. Subhanallah. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, should we read it or
We should read it. Yeah.
okay? So the footnote for Surah 37, verse 147. The Quran, 147. The Quran mentions 30 numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 19, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 99, 100, 200, 300, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 500,000. No, 50,000 and 100,000. Excuse me, 50,000 and 100,000. The sum of these numbers is 162,146, or 19 times 800, or 19 times 8,534, 8,534. See Appendix 1. So, Subhan is amazing. All the numbers, brother, all the numbers mentioned in the Quran, if you add them up, it's a multiple of 19. SubhanAllah, the sum of all the numbers in the Quran.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so just going back to some of these verses, it says in Surah 37, verse 152, indeed they 151 and 152, indeed they grossly blaspheme when they say God has begotten a son. Indeed, they are the liars. And so, like, we see that this is a gross blasphemy, and these people do it, and they, invent other lies to attribute them to God. Um, but then we also see that it says, following the parents blindly, they used to say, had we received the correct instructions from our parents, we would have been worshippers devoted to God alone. But they disbelieved, they will surely find out. So, like, it shows that, God knows all the souls, right? And God sees that these people who blaspheme and they say God has begotten a son on the day of judgment, they will say that if we received the correct instructions from our parents, we would be devoted to God alone. But God knew the souls that were wicked, and God also has examples of people who received the correct instructions and still ended up in hell, and people who didn't receive the correct instructions and ended up becoming submitters and believing in the Quran, right? So this statement that these people make, they were just following their parents blindly, but they would still be following their parents blindly if they thought that because of their parents, they would be better guided. But they have the natural instinct that God has given everybody. If they followed their natural instinct instead of following their parents blindly, God would guide them. So everybody in their, I guess, deep down in their hearts, they know that there's only one God, and that instinct is still there in us. But people decide to follow their parents blindly, despite the fact that they have the instinct. And I think this could be traced back to people, like, when they're not, like, who are these people praying to when they didn't know that anything about Muhammad or Jesus and stuff, when they weren't religiously educated by their parents. They were thinking about God, in their mind, in their hearts, like they would think about God, and then somebody would tell them, oh, you know what, that God, oh, that's Jesus, and this and that, and then they would just, instead of following their instinct, like, which would get them to the truth, they just blindly accepted what their parents told them. And so, this is why it's important for us to also remember that, like, things that our parents have taught us, things that we have inherited, in traditions that have been passed on to us by our generations, from our cultural tribes and races and ethnicities that we come from. There are many, many different types of traditions and practices and teachings that we inherit also, right? And so it's important for us to look at everything in the light of the Quran, look at everything in the light of, worshiping God alone. The world is obviously going to hell. Everybody, majority of these people, are going that way. So it's very important that we don't go with the flow with the world and see how the world is going and we just tune ourselves with it. That's how we ended up here. But if we continue that way, we're gonna end up in hell, God forbid. So we have to re-examine all these inherited traditions. We have to examine all these traditions, and people think that was just something that ended, was a process that, in a way, that was completed, in the sense that you don't have to use your brain anymore. Are basically are asking themselves to be blinded again. Like people that are people that say, for example, that if circumcision was not part of the Quran, like why didn't the messenger say this, the messenger say that? The messenger and the Quran, I mean, both of them, they clearly pointed out that we should look at all inherited traditions and we should follow the Quran alone. So now it's our job to follow the Quran alone, and it is our job to examine all inherited traditions, and the messenger of the covenant, and the Quran also has clearly taught us that if you don't find it in the Quran, don't accept it. If it's true, it could be true, it could be false, but if it's not in the Quran, we shouldn't accept it. And
Inshallah.
so, all these ideas and excuses that people have, that they think that they'll present on the day of judgment by being these kind of like smart advocates of their innocence, that none of that is going to work, because people will not even be allowed to speak on that day. Everybody will know their actions, and of course. So thank God we have this opportunity and we have the scripture and God's guidance to help us and see, and differentiate between right and wrong.
Inshallah, right, brother. Thank you, brother.
Inshallah.
Mashallah. Yeah, there's too much convolution and contradictions in the previous scriptures, so you know um, that's very good point. It's dangerous to go into that territory. You know.
Inshallah.
I know the messenger said it's like 90% and 10%, but and he's right. I'm not arguing with that, but just growing up, it's kind of scary because it seemed like it was more than that, you know. But
Right, brother.
that 10% that people follow, it's what they base their whole religion on. Uh, but yeah, that's where exactly. If it's not in the Quran, we don't listen to it, especially when it comes to like Brother Suleiman said, traditions and stuff, and religious laws and all that. Especially once we've gotten the Quran too, like that's as it says, it supersedes the all the scriptures, and it's the best scripture too, and it's like it's like let's say you had a 1980 Volkswagen or something, and then suddenly God gives you this new Ferrari. It's like, why would people ever go back to driving a little Volkswagen when they have a Ferrari? That would like be almost insulting to the person who gave you your Ferrari. So it just wouldn't make sense. That's just an example. also wanted to comment on the numbers. So God be glorified. No, no human, even just that facet of the miracle, no human could have kept track of that stuff. Especially the numbers that are very spread out. All throughout the Quran. If you ask somebody just to, I mean, even to memorize like 10 numbers, they could have trouble with, and then you have them placed in different parts of the Quran or this big book, and then it has to be a multiple of 19, and you can't mess up and say another number like 5 or 56 or something in that context. And so just this facet of the miracle always was really interesting to me. Yeah, and if you challenge people like who to produce something like this, they can't. And you could even ask them to produce just like a one chapter, and they wouldn't be able to do that, or just one facet, little small facet of this intricate miracle, like the one we just read today. And people can't do it. I mean, even with computers, they'd probably make a mistake in this regard, just for this little facet of the miracle. We're not even asking them to hit all the other elements. So this just shows we see what like a true sign, a true miracle is, right? And not, like with people, the falsehoods and stuff that people that just like believe today, they'll just see some, um, fake expo or something at a church or at a mosque or whatever, and then they get so impressed. They get so impressed by that, and it's just, it's this is actually physical and tangible. You can look at it. It's not deceiving the eyes or anything. Subhanallah.
SubhanAllah, brother, right.
Yeah, so are there any other questions or off-topic questions?
Yeah, so I guess if there are no comments or questions from anyone, God willing, we can conclude our study. So thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Pacific time.
God bless. Thank you, brothers.
God bless you all.
My sister.
God bless you. Assalamu alaikum. God bless you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, brothers.
Assalamu alaikum. God bless you all.
Thank you.